Hello and welcome to Fantasy Football Scout. We are looking at ones to watch this week. You are joined by me, Andy, FPL Teach Mode, and we are also joined by a guest this week, Luke, FPL Irons. How's it going, Luke?
It's going very well, thank you, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. I was literally thinking today, actually, that obviously we've been chatting over the last couple of days about players that we could talk about today, players that we want to put on our watch list, but not necessarily get for game week 1. And I was really enjoying it, actually, because you get so bogged down in just think about game week 1, just think about those first few weeks. And it's been really nice thinking about some other players, hasn't it?
Yes, yeah, I think there's quite a small pool of players that are going around on Twitter at the moment. It's quite nice to think about some players that are a bit rogue. I think some of them might be a bit out there. We struggled for some clubs, didn't we?
Yeah.
Everton in particular, outside of Dean and Calvert-Lewin, we did not have a clue who to pick. So Enjoy that one later, guys.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. Like we've gone for one player from each team. So there are going to be some players we pick that we maybe don't have as much conviction with as others. But it's good to have a few options. And even if you just go away from this and go onto your watch list, even if you didn't know there was a watch list in FPL, you can just put these players in there and just keep an eye on them as the season goes on. And we will touch every now and again on when we think you might want to invest in these players, which I think is quite a nice thing to have a look at. So it's just to try and broaden your horizons and think, right, these are the players I want to keep an eye on as the season goes on. So without any further ado, and I probably will mention that a few times in this episode, saying this is not players we think you should get in game week 1. It's just keep an eye on these players and they are ones to watch as the season progresses. So without any further ado, let's have a look at some of these players. So what I'll do, Luke, I'll tell you the team and you tell everybody the player that we have both agreed on. So this isn't just Luke's ideas. These are what we've both agreed on. And we're going to start with Arsenal. Who is our player, mate?
We've gone for Pepe, which is obviously based on the form he showed at the end of last season. Ended with some really good point hauls in the last 4 or 5 games. I think he ended the season with 5 goals in the final 3 fixtures. So obviously, if he can replicate that to any degree early on in the season, it'll be fantastic. Yeah,
he will. I mean, if I just scroll down to the very end of the season here, like Luke's just alluded to, 16 points in the last game, 15 points in the penultimate game, 9 points against West Brom in the fourth to last game. He missed the game against Chelsea. Absolutely killed it. 40 points in his last 4 games, and he missed one of those. So he really did finish the season well. It's going to be interesting to see whether that was just a good end to his season or whether this is now him fitting into this Arsenal team. The reason we're saying to watch him rather than to invest him in straight away is obviously got Brentford away first, but then Chelsea and Man City. But then it looks quite nice, Norwich and Burnley after that. So, I mean, if you had to say now, Luke, do you think it's more of a good end to the season rather than this is how he's going to be? Or do you think he could be the real deal now?
I'm not sure. They signed him for 70 million quid. We know he's a good footballer. We just need to see it a little bit more often. I hope he does come through, but as you say, the fixtures aren't great, and also we don't know whether he's going to start every game with Saka. You know, Saka's best position is also on the right. So I think that this is the perfect player for a watch list. We don't know whether he's going to start, and his fixtures aren't great. So just keep an eye on him.
Yeah, 100%. And actually, I feel like 7.5 is a lot kinder to people in terms of you can watch him on 7.5. That makes sense. I think it was 9.5 last year, and that's straight away just a bit too much, isn't it? And it's always going to be tough because Smith Rowe's 5.5, Saka's 6.5, so Pepe's the most expensive out of all of them. But he does, if he finishes the season, if he carries on the season as well as he finished last season, then yes, he's definitely someone to watch. Right, moving on to Aston Villa. Who have we picked in Aston Villa, mate?
We've gone for El Ghazi, 6 million, owned by less than 1% of players. Obviously, they start with very nice fixtures, so it would be nice to get him straight in if you know he's going to play, but that is the issue. But, there's a lot of talk at the moment that Grealish to Man City is pretty much done. So if they don't sign a replacement, he may well be a starter this season on pens, on free kicks, takes a couple of corners every so often. And his expected goals per 90 was the 3rd best of all midfielders last season. So when he plays, he's very, very good value.
Yeah, he really is. And I think you've hit the nail on the head there with Grealish going to City. If that does materialise and they don't sign another midfielder, you get to watch those first couple of games and see whether he is somebody you want to invest in. It'll be really interesting, actually, because obviously they have a nice run for the first 3 games. And if he's still then playing in the next lot of games with the tricky games, he's nailed. He's not just going to play in those easy games. So he is definitely one to watch and one to have a look at. The fact that he's on pens, I think, he did a lot with the pens in his limited playing time last time. So if he's also getting the playing time as well, I think he is definitely someone to keep an eye on. Right, next up we have got Brentford. Now, obviously, Tony is going to be so highly owned, and rightly so. But we've gone for somebody that is going to be playing next to Tony, haven't we?
Yeah, I've gone for Bryan Mbeumo, who has been absolutely fantastic for Brentford over the last 2 seasons. Scored a very good goal in pre-season at Old Trafford the other day. He's just a very technically gifted footballer, very, very good on the ball, and is always looking to create or get shots away, which there's not much more you could ask for from an FPL asset, especially at 5.5 million. And my thinking with Brentford is they're going to try and take the game to everybody they play in a similar way to Leeds last year. They may not be as good as Leeds, obviously, but I think they're going to try and score goals. Yeah. So for 5.5 million, at some point in the season when Brentford have a nice run, and Mbeumo and Tony for 12 to 12.5 million, depending on price rises, etc., that's really good value, in my opinion.
Yeah, it really is. And I was literally thinking about this the other night, and I've kind of decided in my head that I really don't mind the double up either. I think the double up's absolutely fine. Mbeumo and Tony. Tony's going to be one of those players where I don't think a lot of people are going to be captaining him, but a lot of people will own him. And if he scores, you're not going to be seeing that rank rise you think you're going to be seeing, because he's going to be 30-40% owned by the time the season kicks off. Whereas if you've got Mbeumo as well, if we think Brentford are going to be this team that score lots of goals but don't have to because they can't defend, there's going to be somebody else that's getting the assists and also a few goals too. And I think Mbeumo could be that man. I know Canos on the other side could also be quite good too, but I think Mbeumo's the one that we're probably looking at more than anything. I wouldn't start the season with a double up, but I think it's something you can definitely consider moving forward. Right, next up we have got Brighton.
Yeah, this one I think is more hope than anything, isn't it? We've gone for Neil Maupay, 6.5 million. Obviously, the 6.5 million price bracket outside of Tony is quite a difficult one to pick anyone from. And Maupay's underlying stats every season are fantastic. Last year, his XG plus XA was 18.05. He only turned that into 10 goals and assists. So even if he has an average season, he can get you close to 20 goals and assists. It's just, is he actually going to do that? I'm not so sure. I'm not sure whether he's good enough for this level, as proven by the last 2 seasons. He's been pretty poor in front of goal.
He has, and I feel like there's a bit of a temperament issue there as well, isn't there? Like he did that whole crying look when something happened, and then he gets stroppy when something happened and had to get subbed off at one point. And the only thing with him is, and I think you've said it just then as well, is he is one of those players where you think he could take that next level up. He could take that step up with the amount of chances they create. If he just improved by 50%, all of a sudden he becomes a really good asset at his price bracket, and you'll be talking about him in the same breath as someone like Tony. So yeah, like I said, we're not going to do all of these picks with as much conviction as each other, but just keep an eye on somebody like him, because Brighton are going to score some goals, and if it's Maupay that all of a sudden starts to convert all of them, actually he could turn into a very, very good asset. Right, next up we have got Burnley.
Yeah, the big one for me, I was shocked when I saw the prices come out. The fact that we were able to get the Burnley Fallbacks again for 4.5 million. Over the course of the last 5 seasons, Burnley have had the 6 most clean sheets in the Premier League. So we know they're very good defensively. And also, Matt Lowton, who I've gone for here, 4.5 million, 3% owned, he bombs on now. Like they used to be a very solid defence where they'd sit back and they'd have a low block. He gets forward now. Gets forward a lot, and out of the defenders that are priced at 5 million or less this season, he created the second most big chances last season. So it's a defence that we can rely on, especially against the lower teams where you're actually going to put him in your side. They keep a lot of clean sheets against the bottom 10, and he's now getting forward and creating chances. So it's the sort of player that over the course of the season could get you 10 to 12 clean sheets and maybe 3 to 5 assists, which for 4.5 million, he's no Trent, but for 4.5. Really solid.
Yeah, it really is. And when you consider that the 2 centre-backs are both 5 million, me and Tarkowski both 5, I think 4.5 million for the player that he does get forward more than people realise. I do really like it. they haven't had any investment yet this year. It doesn't look like they're going to be any more adventurous. So what is Sean Dyche going to do? He's going to go back to exactly what he knows, and it's going to be defending properly and seeing out games. And like you've already said, you can trust a Burnley defence. Yes, they weren't as good last year, but I think they're going to have to dig in a lot more this year. So I think Lowton is a very good pick for 4.5 million. I do agree. Right, next up we have got Chelsea. There was a few that we wanted to pick here, but who do we go for?
Yeah, we've gone for the highest owned player in the video, which is Havertz, 11.2% owned. But in my opinion, if he can nail down that centre forward spot or the number 10 role for Chelsea over the course of the season, he's going to be a fantastic asset at 8.5 million and could rise as high as 9.5 million with 35% ownership. His expected goals per 90 since Tuchel came in was the highest in the division. So we know he's got that calibre and he's going to get a lot of shots away. We just need him to just perform a little bit more. Him and Timo Werner, if they can get it going, also Ziyech, Chelsea's attack could be phenomenal.
Yeah, we say it so often, don't we, about how FPL managers, fans, everybody just don't give people enough time to settle into a league. And he really looked like he was settling into the league by the end of the year. Obviously, they had their Champions League success as well, and that probably helped him playing that European football as well. And if you look at it, it's brilliant because they've got quite a tricky start for the first 6 game weeks. And then they've got Southampton, Brentford, Norwich, Newcastle, Burnley and Leicester all in the next 6, that is. So actually, it's one of those things where you can watch it. If he's playing a false 9, if he's looking good, if Chelsea are looking good, if they're looking like they're good against those tough opposition, you can start looking at Havertz and thinking from game week 7 onwards, he is going to be in my team. 8.5 million, I think, is quite kind, actually, considering that Chelsea, we are expecting to be up there this year, fighting for second, maybe even doing a bit of a title challenge as well. I think Kai Havertz could be in every team from game week 7 onwards. Right, Crystal Palace up next, mate. Who are we gone for here?
We've gone for Elise. Obviously, they've just signed him. In the summer, part of the Palace rebuild. But he's been priced at 5.5 million, which I think is quite fair, considering he's a player that likes to get crosses into the box, takes corners, takes free kicks. And they've got Benteke in the box that's always going to be there winning headers and flick-ons. So there's every potential for a couple of assists. Last season, he got 7 goals and 12 assists in 44 games as an 18-year-old in his debut season. So there's some ability there. I hope he can turn it into something in the Premier League. We might see him struggle. I think Eze probably eased himself into the league last year, didn't he? Wasn't amazing, and I think you could see that from Elise. But if you can jump on him at the right time when Palace have got nice fixtures, he could be a real asset at that price.
Yeah, and this is one of those ones to watch because of the new manager as well. I think if Vieira's obviously gone there, and if Vieira ball starts happening where they start playing a little bit more attacking, a bit more possession based, it could signal good things for Elise. It does remind me a little bit of when De Boer went there and they didn't score any goals in the first 5 games and it all went to pot, didn't it? But it's one of those things where you just think you're going to watch it and see how they start. And if it is actually that Crystal Palace all of a sudden become this team that start attacking a bit more, then I think Elise and Zaha all of a sudden become quite good options. Zaha is going to get doubled up on quite a lot, I think. So Elise might be that a little bit freer on his side. Right, next up we have the team we spoke about at the beginning, mate, Everton. Right. Who have we gone for here?
Yeah, this one shouldn't just be on your watch list. You should get this guy in your team. Game week 1, world-class footballer.
100%.
Andros Townsend.
Andros Townsend. Yeah, I mean, we really struggled here. Apart from Dean and Calvert-Lewin, I mean, I could maybe understand if people went for Pickford in goal, but even then I feel like there's better value everywhere. And it's just keep an eye on Townsend because there's been a lot of chatter behind the scenes saying that he has been brought in literally just to supply Calvert-Lewin. That's all he's going to do is just run down the wing and cross balls in. Not even, trying to score goals. He's literally just going to be crossing balls in. So if that's the case, I do see him a little bit like a Mark Brighton kind of figure where that was literally going to be his role. So just have a look. It could be that he has a sneaky good season this year and gets something like 10 assists. And if that's the case for 5.5 million, that's not too bad. But I will say we did struggle a bit on this pick, didn't we?
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah, as you say, he's going to get crosses into the box. At Palace last year, he averaged 1.6 crosses per game, and in second place was Eze with 0.7. So he more than doubled second place. So that is his game style. He's going to hit the byline, try and chip a few balls in, or cut back and whip a cross in. But yeah, outside of Dean and Calvert-Lewin, I would not be going near Everton quite yet.
No, he has a worldie in him, mind. He does have a worldie in him. Did it against City a couple of times, didn't he? But you look at those fixtures. I mean, he's going to be on your watch list, and he's got beautiful fixtures to start with. So Southampton, Leeds, Brighton, Burnley, Villa, and Norwich. If he's doing nothing in those games, then you probably need to take him off your watch list then. Right, next up we have got Leeds.
Yeah, we've gone for Rodrigo just in the hope that he'll actually get a bit more game time this season. Obviously, had a few little minor injuries and setbacks last season, didn't he? But in terms of his expected goal involvement per 90, he was ahead of Rafinha and Bamford. So it's just the case of getting him in that side. And I quite like him in the attacking midfield role in behind Bamford. When he plays there, he's very, very good and makes those nice, intelligent late runs. So yeah, it's just purely about game time, and that's why he's on my watch list as opposed to taking a punt on putting him in my team.
Yeah, 100%. He's that player where when he plays, he does very, very well. If we have a look at the end of the season, he got 7 points, 12 points, 5.8 points, and that's because he was getting quite a few minutes. Although I say that, actually, he still wasn't getting great minutes there either. He was tend to be doing it as a super sub. So I think he's going to be playing more this season. I think he's a player like Havertz where he took a while to adjust to the league and to get the game time, but I don't see any reason why he can't be, doubling his minutes that he got last year. And if that's the case, he could prove to be a good asset. If at any point as well Bamford gets injured, straight away you're looking at Rodrigo and thinking, yes, please, I want a little bit of that. Right, next up we have got Leicester.
Yeah, we've gone for Barnes. Obviously had a big injury late on last season that probably kept him out of the England squad for the Euros. He was playing that well. He managed an FPL return every 138 minutes last season, so basically one every 1.5 games, which from the wing, that's very, very impressive. So if he can keep up that sort of form for 7 million in this Leicester side, that's good value, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. I owned him at points last year and I absolutely loved him. I think I even benched him. Was it against Liverpool? I think he got hauled against Liverpool last year and I benched him for that one. But he's one of those players. I did that a lot last year. He's one of those players, I think, he really does have that threat in every game. I think Leicester really started playing to his strengths last year as well and realising that he was one of their best players and most effective players. Yep. Obviously, I don't think it's a coincidence that he got injured and then Iheanacho started playing really well because I think then they started playing to his strengths. But I feel like they're going to change their system for Harvey Barnes this year. And when you look at it, I mean, there's every reason to. He's so effective in what he does. If they can get the best out of him and Iheanacho, I think they're going to have a really good attacking team this year. But it's just worth having a look at to see how quickly he comes back from his injury, whether he's fit enough to be playing every game and every minute of every game as well, because that's what you want. But yeah, just keep a bit of an eye on him. Fixtures-wise, it starts okay, and then he has quite a nice run. He has Brighton, Burnley and Crystal Palace from game week 5 onwards, so that might be a bit of a time to invest if he is starting to play 90 minutes of games. Then we've got Liverpool up next. I like this pick.
Yeah, we've gone for Virgil Van Dyke. In his 2 full seasons for Liverpool, he's got 9 goals, 6 assists and 35 clean sheets, so basically 50 total returns in 2 seasons. Very good for bonus, obviously. And yeah, it's a difficult one because I think if you're ever going to invest in Liverpool defence, you go Trent or Robertson. So it's a difficult one to get Van Dijk in, and how to justify making that decision is a tough one. Well,
if you needed 0.5 million to upgrade one of your midfielders to a better midfielder, would you go from Robbo to Van Dijk? Is it worth it, do you think?
See, I think the decision on that is, are you going to get that defender in mid to long term? I think if you are, you can punt on Van Dijk and hope he gets a couple of goals. Mm-hmm. I think if you're going short term, maybe 3 to 5 weeks, I think you've got to go Robertson, haven't you, and hope for the explosive 12 to 15 pointers. Yeah,
I think that's right. I think Van Dijk's the kind of player you get if you think, I'm not going to wild card for a while and I'm just setting my team up for as long as possible. Then I think that's fine. But like you said, I think if you're going to wild card early, you're probably going to focus on someone like Robertson instead because of that explosiveness of him. Don't get me wrong, Van Dijk is also explosive on his day because he can get you a goal, but I feel like Robertson's probably got that more consistency, hasn't he? Fixtures, by the way, I mean, we all know this for Liverpool. They're lovely to start with. Yes, they've got that Chelsea game in game week 3, but I can see that being 0-0, to be perfectly honest. So I don't think there's anything wrong with doubling up on Liverpool to start with. But yeah, keep Van Dijk on your watch list because we need to know how he's come back from injury as well. He looked quite ropey in that pre-season game I saw him in. So he's obviously been out for quite a while. So just keep an eye on him. Man City up next, mate.
Yeah, I think we had to go for Ferran Torres here, didn't we? 7 million midfielder who might be playing up front, even if he's not nailed up front. If he's going to start 20 to 25 games in the striker position for Man City, that could be the stuff of FPL dreams, couldn't it?
Yeah, it really could. And if Kane doesn't get bought as well, if that doesn't go over the line, I said to you at the very beginning, last season when they signed Ferran Torres, that I really liked him as a player. Like the fact that he can drift in and play up front as well. And I think we started seeing that more at the end of the season. And I just think he is going to fill that hole this year. The only issue for me, I feel like he's probably more subbable than someone like Mahrez potentially. Like it might be Torres that you take off in the 70th minute, but I think for 7 million, he's only 3% owned. If you are that kind of manager that fancies, taking a bit of a gamble on a City player, that's absolutely fine. For me, I just want to see where he's playing. I would love to see him up top. If he is starting to play up top, obviously the fixtures, Norwich, Arsenal, Leicester, Southampton, from game week 2 onwards, I mean, that Norwich game, if he's playing up top against them, could be beautiful. But then fixtures get probably quite nice after game week 13, so it's probably worth having a look at him then. But I mean, we could watch him for the first 3 weeks. He's nailed on, plays up top. And then in game week 4, he all of a sudden he's on the bench or is excluded from the whole squad. So it's always worth having a look at that with City players.
Yeah.
Now, Man United. Now, this is a player that I have literally just put in my team today because I'm very excited about him. So, Luke, who's our United player?
Yeah, we've gone for Mason Greenwood. 20 attacking returns in 2 seasons, only played 3,000 minutes. So very, very good for a youngster. And I'm hoping this is the year that he emerges because he's one hell of a player, isn't he? Already got into some England squads. Very good with both feet. Can play all across the front three. I'm hopeful that he can. This can be his year, especially with that Rashford injury. I'm hoping with the Rashford injury that he can come in and fill that left wing or striker spot where needed and really perform.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's the Rashford injury that's put him on my radar so much. I mean, I love him as a player, but I think Ollie's been using him very well. A bit like Foden at City. They haven't just said go and play every game. They've managed them really well. I mean, you look at some of his returns last year, 6, 11, 15, 10, 8. Like when he plays, he really does play well. And he's also somebody where even if he doesn't start, he can come on and do damage, which I quite like about him. I think for 7.5 million, you are edging on, you really want somebody a little bit more nailed. When you get to that 8 spot, I think you need somebody a bit more nailed. But I think to begin with the season, he's going to be. And then his fixtures, his first 4 fixtures are quite nice. Leeds at home, Southampton, Wolves and Newcastle. Even West Ham away, I don't think's that bad a fixture. And then Aston Villa at home. You heard me, Luke. So yeah, I love him. I absolutely love him to start the season. I've just downgraded Robertson to bring Greenwood into my team, actually. I quite like the upside of Greenwood personally. But he is somebody to watch still. Yes, I'm starting with him, but he is somebody to see actually the first 2 weeks if he's playing every game. I mean, I think he's going to be playing then majority of games up till Christmas until Rashford's back, really. Right, Newcastle up next. We've gone for an interesting one here, haven't we?
Yeah, we've gone for Matt Ritchie, who's been priced at 5 million, which for a Newcastle defender seems a bit steep. But if they have a nice run of fixtures at any point and it looks like he's either playing on the wing or even playing at wing back in a 5, he's going to be getting a lot of crosses into the box. And, they're not the prettiest team to watch at times, Newcastle, but they're a team that can keep clean sheets on their day. So I do like him for a few 12-pointers. It's just about getting him in at the right time. Last season, he had the 9th highest expected goal involvement per 90 for defenders. So for a Newcastle team, that's quite impressive, really. They're pretty tired to watch. So the fact that he was even in the top 10, not bad. It's
a massive shame he's not 4.5. If he was 4.5, I really do think he'd be in a lot of teams. Like not every team, but I feel like he'd be in quite a few because the upside's really there. Fixtures, I mean, you can watch him the first 3 weeks. You can even invest in the first 3 weeks so the fixtures aren't that bad. And then from game week 5 onwards, he's got Leeds, Watford, Wolves, Spurs at home, which is not a red fixture, which is quite interesting, and then Crystal Palace away. So the fixtures aren't that bad after a while once we get to watch him. If he's playing every game, I just wish he was 4.5. If he was 4.5, he'd be bang on my radar. But I think for 5, that's why he's definitely worth putting on the watch list, just to see whether he's playing every game, really.
Yeah.
Right, next up, we have got Norwich.
Yeah, gone for Max Aarons. I think Pookie's the obvious one, but he'll be highly owned at different points in the season when Norwich have nice runs. I think Aarons, it's a good pick. He bombs on a lot from the right back position. Norwich aren't the most defensively sound side, that's for sure. Yeah. But if they're improving. They're improving, and they're trying to be a little bit more solid. They were certainly more solid last season in the Championship than they were when they previously got promoted. So I think they're going to play it a bit more safe this year, and will likely get a few more clean sheets. I think last time they were in the Prem, they only got 5.
Yeah.
So to stay in the league, they obviously need to up those numbers to at least 8 to 10. So if you are going to invest in Norwich at any point and their defence looks a little bit more sound, you could bring him in, and I don't think it would be a terrible decision.
I will say as well, he plays pretty much every minute. I think he played more minutes than any other Norwich player last year. More than Pookie, more than Buendia. I was looking at it when I was doing one of my other streams, and yeah, he plays so many minutes for this team. He's a fit lad. Their start is horrendous. Liverpool, Man City, Leicester and Arsenal. It could not be any worse. But in the same respect, you can look at it and think, well, if he's getting forward against them, and he's whipping balls in against them, and he might, you never know, have some joy against them. I'm not expecting clean sheets, but he might have some joy. Then all of a sudden the fixtures look quite nice. Watford, Everton, Burnley, Brighton. Yes, he's got Chelsea in between there, but after that, Leeds, Brentford, Southampton, Wolves, Newcastle. If you want to take a punt, he's one of those players where I think because he plays every minute, he is the 4.5 kind of defender you can look at. Because of that start as well, he could drop in price. So he could be 4.4 million by the time you pick him up. And that could mean quite a lot moving forward. So a 4.5 million defender that goes into those fixtures, Watford, Everton, Burnley, Brighton, I don't think's that bad. And we know he can attack well in the Premier League. It's not like he's only ever done this in the Championship. He's done this in the Premier League before. So I really like Max Aarons, genuinely. It's just a shame he's playing for a Norwich team that, like you said, defensively are quite suspect.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit, yeah. Southampton up next, mate. Who do we go for here?
Yeah, gone for Chey Adams. I think Southampton had a very, very poor end to the season, didn't they?
Yeah, really did.
At one point around Christmas, they were top of the league, and then in 2021 they had the worst form of any team, even below the likes of Sheffield United and Fulham. So it was tough to pick a player, to be honest. I definitely didn't want to go near their defence. They've been incredibly poor. Chey Adams, in what I thought was quite an average season for him, picked up 16 FPL returns. So, in a good season, he has the ability to improve and hit the likes of, hit maybe 20 FPL returns, 25 in a very good season. The only issue is, will he play better or worse without Danny Ings? Because at the moment, we're not sure where Danny Ings is going to end up, whether he's going to try and look for a move, try and force the move, whether he's willing to stay, whether he's injured. Yeah. It's all a bit up in the air, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is, and it's worth saying now as well about the transfer window won't close until game week 3 either. So it could very well be that Ings starts there and actually he plays the first 2 games and then gets sold in game week 3. So I think he's worth keeping on the watch list just to see how he copes with Danny Ings or without Danny Ings. Yeah. I'm wondering whether he's a bit like Mopai in terms of will he take that next level up? Because if he's going to be Southampton's main striker, we know they can create chances because obviously Danny Ings is scored tons of goals for him, and Chey Adams did well last year in terms of goals, but it's whether he can do it by himself and also whether Ings leaving just kind of... We know Southampton can capitulate, don't we? Like they do it, they've lost 9-0 2 seasons in a row, but it's whether Danny Ings going, that talisman going, just ruins them, and it just ruins their season before it even gets started. So, yeah, I think Chey Adams is one to definitely just keep an eye on for the first couple of weeks. And if he's leading that line and he looks like he's taking that mantle, then, yeah, have a look. Spurs up next. Yeah,
gone for Reguilon. Obviously, I think there's a big caveat for this pick, which is, will Nuno play wing-backs? You look at Johnny and Doherty for Wolves when they first came up, which for me, the two of the best wing backs we've seen together in the Premier League in recent years. They picked up 32 attacking returns in their first 2 seasons together as a duo. So if Doherty and Reguilon or Aurier and Reguilon are playing as wing backs in this Spurs system, under Nuno, we know that they can get a lot of goals and assists. So for a team that hopefully will improve defensively as well, I'd assume under Nuno they'll get a few more clean sheets. So for 5 million, could be a really good pick. It's just, as I say, if they then play the 4 and go a bit more attacking, you'll get maybe a few more assists, but a lot less clean sheets and less bonus. So it's a tough one.
Yeah, it is. And there are so many maybe players on this list where it's players that should have done better last year or were putting out a lot of good stats last year and never really came to anything. And I think Reguilon's one of those players. Every week I was saying, oh, this will be the week. This will be the week he gets an assist. This will be the week he gets a goal. I think there was one week where he hit the bar and almost got an assist. And it just constantly seemed to be doing that. And they would always lose their clean sheet as well, which all of a sudden that promising defender is getting you 2 points. The fixtures aren't great, I will say that. I mean, you look at it and it's really hard to think where you're going to invest. From game week 11 onwards, it doesn't look as bad. So he's got Everton, Leeds, Burnley, Brentford, Norwich, Brighton. That might be the time where you could maybe invest in him. I think 5 million is a good price for him because we don't know what Spurs are going to do this year. But yeah, keep an eye on him in those first couple because you've got some nice fixtures in between not so nice fixtures. So just have a look and see how he does in those easier fixtures, and then maybe you could invest from kind of game week 11 onwards. Right, next up we have got Watford.
Yeah, this one again, slight caveat. We've gone João Pedro, 5.5 million, but it's more of a Watford striker, 5.5 to 5 million.
Yeah.
They've got, I think, 16% of all FPL forwards at the moment play for Watford. None of them are priced at higher than 5.5 million. So
Just
when
ridiculous.
we know, it's absolutely madness. But once we know who's going to be leading that line,
Yeah.
my hope from an FPL point of view is that Troy Deeney's leading the line, because then you've got 5.5 million striker that's going to be taking penalties.
Yeah.
So, for 5.5 million, if you're early wildcard and know Troy Deeney's nailed, you can just slip him in as your third choice striker and put him in every so often because he's taking penalties. There's no issues there, and they get a lot of penalties. In the last 2 seasons, they picked up 18 penalties. So Troy Deeney's one to look out for. Pedro, though, 19 years old, he's got so much talent that he's a very, very raw at the moment. He's not quite where he wants to be in front of goal yet. Only scored 9 last season, I think, in about 30 starts. So he's not the finished article quite yet, but he is a top talent. So if he does start, even if it be on the wing, it's definitely one to look out for.
Yeah, I agree. I think Troy Deeney's a bit old in the hat now, and I think he will play games because he is their main man, isn't he? But I think Pedro, for me, is the one that will start, especially towards the end of the season, will really start, making that striker position his own. And when you've got someone like Ismaila Sarr on the wing as well, it means that it's not just all focused on that striker, is it? So I do really like it. I do like the fact that you said it could be any of their strikers, because like you said, they've got about 10 on the game, which is just ridiculous. So it could be Pedro. We're just saying the fact that we're hoping that the cream rises and it does end up being Pedro that takes it. But unfortunately, in this game, if you've got 10 strikers, it could be any of them. It could be one of them comes in, scores a brace, and then keeps it for 2 months. So we're just hoping Pedro does it. But he's somebody to keep on your watch list. If you wanted to put all 10 on your watch list, go for it. Next up, we've got your teammate. We've got West Ham.
Yeah, gone for Ben Rama purely because we know what he can offer.
Oh, love him.
In his 2 seasons for Brentford in the Championship, he got 50 goals and returns. So 50 goals and assists. Sorry. So we know he's such a good player, and he nearly got Brentford promoted pretty much single-handedly. We just didn't see it enough last year at West Ham. I don't know whether it's the system or the manager. Something doesn't quite add up at the moment. I think David Moyes kind of likes a player that is very one-dimensional. He knows, for example, Jared Bowen. He knows Jared Bowen's going to get the ball, and he's going to look to either hit the byline and cross or cut inside and shoot. He knows what he's getting, whereas Ben Rama will sometimes try and take on a man, do a skill, do a fancy little flip. And I think it annoys David Moyes at times. So
I think it does. I don't think he hides it very well either.
No, quite often the arms go up in the air. Like, oh, what are you doing, Saeed? So if he can just get a bit of form and get a few minutes in the tank early on, 6 million, he could be a real asset. But I hope it comes together. I really do, because he's got so much talent.
Yeah, he really does. I love him as a player. Absolutely love him as a player. And this is one of those perfect ones where you say if he starts those first 3 games, or even starts the first 2 games, he's then got Crystal Palace and Southampton. If he's starting and he's playing north of 60, 70 minutes every game, he's somebody I'm going to be really looking at. I do genuinely love him. For 6 million as well, if you're looking at someone like Ismail Assar to move off him, or if you're looking at Buendia to move off him after game week 3, you could do a lot worse than a starting and playing, say, Ben Rama. I really like him as a player. And then last one we have got is Wolves.
This one was a difficult one, wasn't it? Because there were 2 players that we were debating. We've gone for Jimenez because we know what he can do in a Wolves shirt. He's played 88 games for Wolves since joining the Premier League, and he's got 52 FPL attacking returns. So he's the focal point of this team, and always will be. What a player. It's just, will he be the same player? That injury he picked up last year at Arsenal, one of the worst I've seen in a long time. So I hope he can be as good as he once was. But again, this is why it's a watch list. And the Wolves fixtures do cater quite nicely to a watch list, because their fixtures to start with are quite poor. Then from, is it game week 4? Game week 4, game week 5? The fixtures for about 10 weeks are fantastic.
Yeah, and that's it. Like, especially with head injuries, you never know how people are going to return from head injuries. So it's always worth keeping an eye on it. Making sure that he's playing as many minutes as he can as well, because, I mean, he's always been a 90-minute man, hasn't he? So we just need to make sure that that's the case as well, because he used to score a lot of goals late on too. So it's worth having a look at that. I mean, if you look at the fixtures, like we've just said, it's Leicester, Spurs and Man United to start with, which is not very nice. You get to see how he's returned, whether he's got that movement still got that yard of pace, and whether people are actually supplying him as well. Yep. But then he's got Watford, Brentford, Southampton, Newcastle, Aston Villa, Leeds. Oh, just lovely. And I mean, he's got Everton in there as well, which I don't think is that bad. Then Crystal Palace, West Ham, Norwich, Burnley. So for the next, 10 game weeks after that, it looks very good. So for 7.5 million, this is one of the big reasons why I'm starting with 3 up top. No matter what, I'm starting with 3 up top, because there are so many good options at that price range. You want to give yourself the option to move to someone like Jimenez. When you've got 3 up top, one of them's probably not going to do very well. So you want to be able to bring in one of those strikers that doesn't start very well in terms of fixtures, but then gets nice. And Jimenez is very, very much on my list. Lovely, Luke. That's all 20 teams done. I hope you enjoyed that with me.
That was very good, thank you, mate. Yeah, no, enjoyed that a lot. It's one of those things, isn't it, with a watch list? It's nice to have players in the back of your mind when you're sitting there watching the games on the weekend, just thinking about who you could bring in the future. I know there's quite a few there. I like the fact that the likes of Chelsea, Arsenal and Man City don't have the nicest fixtures to start with, because we don't really know what their system's going to be, how they're going to play, who's going to play. So the fact we can sit back and watch them for a few weeks, same for Wolves, and just take in, Chilwell looks good, Torres looks good, Smith Rowe looks good, and then move them in slowly when the fixtures improve. I think that's a really important thing that we all need to keep an eye out for in FPL.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm using my watch list way more this year than I've ever done it before. I really like the idea of just keeping that watch list, saying these are the players I like, these are the players that I think could do well, and then using that data, like you said, to say, right, now let's actually scout those players and see how they're getting on, as opposed to let's scout everybody. You just need to focus it a bit more. And as we've said at the very beginning, these are not players we think you should invest in game week 1. They're just players to keep an eye on. And, just impress your mates that you're getting in before they do. Right, Luke, thank you very much. And thank you everybody for watching. We've been Fantasy Football Scout, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.